As a kid, what was the creepiest, most WTF thing you ever noticed about another kid's family? I went to elementary school with a boy who I'm now sure had some serious messed up stuff going on at home. He often made really violent comments. Once he threatened to bring his dad's gun to school and shoot me. When we had the "if an adult touches you in any of these places, you need to tell someone" lesson. He seemed really bothered and yelled at some kids who were giggling at the mention of genitals. We were maybe 8. I had a crush on a kid in our class, and it was painfully obvious. Kids were teasing me for it as kids do, sitting in a tree kissing song and all. He asked me if I wanted to have sex with the kid I had a crush on, then went on to say, "It's okay if you do, I do it with my mom." I've been trying to track him down ever since social media became a thing and I haven't been able to find him. I hope things turned out okay for him. My son made this discovery, told me. I stopped in to verify, because 7-year-olds can misinterpret things. Friend's family brand new next door neighbor set up their master bedroom and the living room. Walk in the front door and you were in the master bedroom, except the normal living room entertainment things were there. TV, Nintendo, etc. All the kids were hanging out on the bed, playing games. Weird, but whatever. Then there was the creepy part. Cameras were set up aiming at the bed. This was in the mid-90s, and the cameras were giant 80s video recorders on tripods. I figured my son had seen a day bed or a sofa bed in the living room, and normal camera gear. Nope. He nailed it by saying the family was making movies in the bed in the living room. He didn't know the word porno yet. Edit. Yes, I called police. Nothing came of it. My son didn't think or say sex was being filmed. He thought they were family videos like we had, but in bed. He didn't see any filming, but was aware enough to notice the odd situation and told me, thankfully. My friend's family decided we should all watch a movie. His sister wanted to choose, so she opened the cabinet to reveal that their entire movie collection, 100% of what was available to watch, were Don Knotts movies. I didn't even know there were so many. It was weird. Got another. When a friend of mine was young, starting at probably age 9 through 16, his punishment when he really screwed up was kneeling on uncooked rice in the dark. His parents would make him go to the bathroom, spread some uncooked rice on the tile floor, turn off the lights, and make him kneel on it. Feed check every few minutes to make sure he was kneeling. He got in trouble for the usual dumb kid stuff, but also for accidents. Once he dropped a glass pitcher, just slipped from his hands. Total accident. His mom told me to go home because it was time to kneel on rice. On a school trip in primary school, a little 9-year-old girl started hysterically crying because she was worried that her dad would do something to her little brother and mum while she wasn't there to look after them. This did not happen to me directly, but to my BFF who was traumatized by it. We were about 12 years old. BFF stayed over at a mutual friend's house. She woke up to friend's stepfather attempting to molest friend and friend saying, "Please. No. Not tonight." The next day friend told her mom, because molestation was going on a while and escalating. Police called. My BFF had to give a statement. Arsehole was promptly divorced and went to jail. When I was about 9, I became friends with a brother and sister of a family who was the filthiest slobs ever. They really lived like pigs. The parents were alcoholics and just sat around all day playing radio bingo and rolling cigarettes. One time, the youngest brother, who was probably around 5 years old, pulled down his diaper. Yes, he wore diapers at that age, and started taking a shoot on the living room floor. I pointed it out, but their reaction was like, "Oh, he does that all the time," like it was completely normal. WTF. When I was 12, I had this friend. We had a sleepover once for his birthday. The next morning his older sister 15/16 wandered round all morning in just a vest, top and thong. None of the family said anything to her, like this was normal. She also made a point of bending over in front of us, then would be like, "What, you looking at pervs?" Friend's dad was a nudist, never wore clothes. She had a sleepover for her birthday, and although we didn't see him that night, when we woke up he had zero qualms about walking into a lounge full of 11 plus 7-year-old girls with his dick and balls out. Maybe not the worst, but I cold and still can't understand why he didn't make an exception for just that day at least. We found out one kid ate dog food. His family probably fed him real food. He just really liked dog food. We found this out because we were hanging out at my place before school in the backyard, and he reached down into our dog food bag and just started chowing down. No, it wasn't even to gross us out. He did it a few times just because he liked it. When I was in preschool, we were all given a printout of a coloring book. It was an Eskimo, so I colored mine in and made his face sorta brown, because it was an Eskimo. When we were done, the teacher helped us hang them up, and I saw that only me and the one Mexican kid in the class had made our Eskimos brown. The rest of the white kids had made little pink-faced Eskimos with blonde hair. The kid who sat next to me pulled me aside and told me that I needed to hide mine and not show it to my parents because they wouldn't love me anymore if they saw I colored a non-white Eskimo. I cried, told my parents about it that night, and they told me to just stop being friends with the kid because he wasn't nice. It wasn't until years later that I figured out the kid wasn't just being a dick. His parents were racist as shoot, and he was legit concerned for my well-being because he probably thought all families were like his. I was not really a kid, but I was at a tutorial center which accommodated students from all ages. There was this kid of 8 to 9 years old who was cheerful, jiggly, clever and smartass, and clingy. She also liked to steal stuff. She stole our things multiple times. One day she took my stationery, forgot exactly what it was. She lived just the next block, so we went there to get it back. Her mom listened to us, called her to living room, then in front of us started beating the kid with plastic coat hanger until it was broken into 3 parts. I was really mortified and really sorry. Poor kid screamed and cried, but mom went on despite our pleas to let it go. Now I think the kid's cheerful countenance and clinginess were probably a silent appeal to be close to someone who could prevent the beatings at home. And she stole things to get attention. I'm still sorry until today. Back in the day, my older brother had this friend was a weirdo. Like, my brother's a standard, cringy, annoying neckbird, so all of his friends were of a similar nature, but this kid was especially weird and creepy. My mom would take me along when she'd go to pick my brother up from his house after school, and I remember my mom insisting I stay put in the living room when she went to the kid's bedroom to collect my brother. It turned out it was because every inch of this guy's bedroom walls were plastered with hardcore pornography. He was in 8th grade, but his dad would buy him Hustler, jugs, whatnot. I can see why my brother really liked hanging out with him. And the dad was very open about his own extensive pronoun collection. His dad was just an all-around mega creep. He was tall, rail thin, bald, wire-framed glasses, strangely pale, always clammy looking, and gave off the most uncomfortable vibes. The mother was jittery and nervous all the time, and it turned out the dad had an insane temper. There were holes in the walls around the house from him raging. He was probably hitting her, or, at the very least, intimidating the shoot out of her. I remember my mom watched this kid's dad storm out of his car outside the middle school one day, pick his son up by the neck, and start angrily hissing shoot at him between clenched teeth in front of other parents and teachers. Apparently, nobody did jack shoot, typical of my town. Bunch of winners. My mom hated my brother hanging out with this kid and understandably did not want him going over his house, but she also knew he didn't have much in the way of friends and she couldn't really stop him from going over there after school because she was working. Thinking of that family gives me the creeps. I went to a sleepover birthday party in high school for a girl I only semi-knew. We were cool, but we weren't close. When I arrived I realized her family was pretty religious from the decor. Lots of crosses and word artwork about Jesus, etc. Not being from that background, it put me a little on edge about my behavior, not wanting to offend anyone. We're eating pizza for dinner with her parents and brother. There were probably only 2 to 3 other girls besides me. One of her parents says that they saw a girl from our school walking down the sidewalk when they were driving home a few days before. All the guests were like, "Oh yeah, Shelby. I don't really know her." The parents and brother proceeded to just completely tear this girl apart. They verbatim said the words horse and slut. They even went so far as to say something to the tune of "She'll get what she deserves." I was so incredibly uncomfortable because it was really freaking weird how petty and invested they were in talking shoot about this girl. I felt like it was really inappropriate for parents to talk like that about one of our peers in front of us. All the guests were just kind of quiet and not contributing, and it eventually petered out, but I was on edge all night and I never went back. I went to my mate's house back in the summer of '79 to play some baseball. Well, he went in to grab some food for himself before we started and accidentally dropped the glass milk bottle on the ground. Not even 5 seconds later his dad comes up to him and starts beating the absolute shoot out of him. Halfway through the beatdown he looks directly at me standing outside peering through the window and gives me the most murderous look ever. We never played ball that day. He went to school a few days later and had 2 black eyes and a broken jaw over spilt milk. 38 years later, and I'm still best friends with him. He cut out all contact with his family and doesn't talk to them at all anymore. At a friend's house for a sleepover, I answered a yes or no question with yeah, and was told by the mother that was rude and inappropriate. I was told I had to write yes on a piece of paper 100 times or go home. I thought she was joking, so I did that little polite smile/laugh and said sorry. She dialed my mom's number, handed me the phone, and told me to tell her I was going home and why. I was dumbfounded at the time, but now I think it's pretty funny. Who does that? Poor friend. There was a girl in my 6th grade class, called Tammy, who was much more developed than the rest of us skinny and naive girls. One day my friend and I were invited to her house after school. While giving us a tour of her house, when we got to her parents' bedroom, she sat on their waterbed. This was the 70s. She told us there's not much work to be done when you have 6 on a waterbed because the mattress just moves along. My friend and I looked at each other puzzled. We didn't know anything about 6 yet. Years later, I saw Tammy in a documentary about childhood 6 abuse. I still wonder about her and feel guilty that I never told an adult about the waterbed. My best friend from 1st grade until we went to different schools for middle school was Joe. He was nice. His parents drove new trucks and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The first and only time I went to his home, it was in a nice area, although it was freestanding, not part of a community. The home was a dump, paint faded and chipped, part of the gutter broken and angling off the side of the house, and some major cracks. The lawn was a mess as well. Inside, things were dusty and smelly and there were a lot of insects. Ants and sea cockroaches were crawling around everywhere during broad daylight. I try my best to ignore things while we play video games in the living room. When it's time to finally go to sleep, we go to Joe's room and the first thing I notice is cobwebs on the ceiling corners near the bed. I hate spiders, so I'm already freaked out. I go to get a closer look hoping that there's no spiders, and instead I see a damn black widow. I ask Joe if he has bug spray around and he says no and not to worry. The spiders, plural, which freaked me out further, don't bite. Then I swear to God, he points at the black widow in the corner and says, "That's Matilda, she's nice." I didn't sleep much that night. I don't understand how people live in such conditions. His dad owned his own small construction company and his mother was an accountant. They definitely had money, so I don't know why they wouldn't clean up and fix up their home. I was having some issues at home when I was about 13 or 14, and a girl from school, Tracy, who I didn't know all that well, offered for me to stay with her. She told me we could live with her dad and talked about how cool he was, etc. So we go to meet up with her dad. He's a very large guy with a bunch of badly done tattoos and the remnants of a greasy looking mullet. He's thinning badly on top. He's wearing jeans and a leather vest, and to be honest he looks pretty dodgy, but he has a stylish pretty girlfriend with him who seems nice, which kind of appeased me. We get in his car and drive to some house that Tracy has apparently just been kicked out of. I'm told to wait in the car with her dad while Tracy and the dad's girlfriend go inside to collect Tracy's clothes. So I'm sitting in the car with good old dad, who is watching me in the rearview mirror. He starts asking me a bunch of questions about school etc. and leads up to asking me if I have a boyfriend. I was getting really uncomfortable with the conversation, which he seems to be enjoying. Has stopped watching me in the mirror and is turned around to face the back seat. Has licking his lips and grinning this seedy grin, and has asking me if I'm a virgin. I didn't know what to say, but something in me told me to say no, so I did. He seems irritated by this and turns back to face the front, just as Tracy and his girlfriend come back. We drive for a while and I realize we're going out of town. We eventually end up on a rural property surrounded by bush. The house has seen far better days. By this time it's dark. We go inside and Tracy's dad brings out a huge pickle jar full of weed and gives it to Tracy and I. He offers us cask wine and he and his girlfriend disappear. I haven't eaten and am not at all comfortable, so I barely smoke anything. I'm nervous and don't feel safe. Tracy gets off her face and we eventually fall asleep on the couch in the lounge room. The next day I go for a drive into town with the girlfriend and hightail it to find somewhere else to stay. Pretty dodgy, but no harm, no foul, right? Turns out though, Tracy's dad isn't her dad. Has her mum's ex-boyfriend. Her mum is in jail, who is a meth cook and the main supplier for the town I grew up in. He and his girlfriend run a side business where they bring young girls back to their place, get them fricked up on drugs and alcohol, then film them in threesome situations with the dad and girlfriend which they sell. I don't know if things would have gone differently if it had the wine or smoked more pot. I do know that a girl from school who was 2 years above me ended up in one of their films that year. A dad of a friend always slapped my friends and his wife's butt, making lewd comments about his little women and how my friend had grown up so much. You could always tell she was embarrassed. Her dad was a regular alcoholic and I more than once asked my friend if he ever abused her, although she'd always swear he never went that far. Her parents later divorced when her dad developed serious Korsakoff syndrome, at which point he'd no longer tend to his hygiene unless told to, and all he did was sit at the table all day with a mug of stale coffee and yesterday's newspaper. Kind of sad but ironic. She has no contact with him anymore, I think. Had a friend tell me about how his dad sexually molested him like it was a normal thing. We were in 5th grade. P.S. His dad had been gone for a while. By the time I knew him, he was just with his mom. She was also a pile of crazy, but that is a different story. Had a friend who was a son of 2 doctors. By the time he was 15, he had made his own apartment in the basement of the house. He didn't let his parents down there. He did all of his own cooking and laundry. The place was immaculate. Upstairs, where his parents lived, was the exact opposite. Although they were well-respected medical doctors, they were also hoarders at home. Mostly books, newspapers, and magazines. They were stacked everywhere. Also electronics. They had like 10 television sets in the living room, competing for space with several console stereo systems of the late 1960s and early 1970s.